I am Kamali, taking you through some of the things people are talking about and sharing around the world on NewsFeed today. How a pop star turned politician, now locked up, became the voice of disaffected youth in Uganda. Australia gets its fifth Prime Minister in 6 years. And why are luxury brands scrambling to set up shop in China? And the Snoot challenge, it's Friday's Animals Doing Stuff. On top of our newsfeed, Bobi Wine, real name Robert Chaaa-gulani. He's a Ugandan musician who's been a vocal critic of his country's president and is in jail on treason charges. This is him in court yesterday. He's had loads of support both inside and outside Uganda. The hashtag Free Bobi Wine has been trending worldwide all week, and a petition calling for his release has been signed by more than 30,000 people, including some well-known musicians. Now, after a successful career selling records, Bobi Wine started in politics selling hope. Uganda has been ruled by the same man for 30 years, Yoweri Museveni. It also boasts the world's youngest population. 78% of its people are under the age of 35. And most of the younger voting age are done with the 74-year-old President Museveni, and they want to change. This is one of Bobi Wine's tracks. It's called Freedom and takes direct aim at those in power.
Similar to the one of slave trade, this operation is worse than apartheid. The gun is the master, citizen slave. The ball of Africa is bleeding. Question: what was the purpose of the liberation when we can't have a peaceful transition? What is the purpose of the constitution when the government disrespect the constitution? Where is my freedom of expression when you judge me because of my expression?
And we can talk now to Rosabelle Chaaa-gulani. She's a writer and activist based in Kampala in Uganda. Rosabelle, thank you very much for joining us. Just quickly, just tell us currently where Bobi Wine is and what kind of condition he's in.
Bobi Wine was yesterday charged with fresh charges of treason in a town north of Kampala, about 330 kilometers out north of the capital city, Kampala, and he's being held there in a civil prison, unlike in the past 10 days where he was under military confinement. And we saw him for the first time.
Okay, and there were concerns that he had been beaten in prison. His wife had said so. How did he look when he came out yesterday?
Indeed, the accounts of his wife and his family, what he told them, what he went through, you could see he could barely walk. He was on crutches. He was not able to even walk, even on crutches. He needed extra hands. We saw him break down in the courtroom. He was really frail and he cannot walk by himself. So I don't think he inflicted that on himself. That has to have an explanation. And torture is likely explanation at the hands of the security forces.
Very disappointing. And Rosabelle, just give us a sense now. You've had a few days to reflect on what's happened. There are these new charges of treason against Bobi Wine. Just give us a sense how people in Uganda are feeling a week after his incarceration and the fact that the authorities seem to be quite happy to continue keeping him inside and not listen to the people.
I think you must note that the president was within the vicinity as the military court was dropping those charges of firearm possession, charges that we know for sure are trumped-up charges. Just like in the past, we have seen Dr. Kizza Besigye, who is one of the leading opposition figures here for the last 15 years, has also been given treason, terrorism, and rape charges. So it is consistent within the workings of the Museveni administration whenever there's a challenging opponent that comes up. And in this case, it's really much more challenging because the people, young people, who are 78% of our nation, below the age of 35, are on the side of Bobi Wine and opposition politicians. So the president is really losing grip on that constituency, and he knows that the road ahead is not going to be easy. So people are very disappointed, and there was protests, and people, the artists, there are different ways of protesting. There's music, people are playing his music. If you pass around radios who are playing his music to protest his continued incarceration. Not only him, but 33 others. Let's not forget there are 4 other members of parliament. One in a very bad condition, hospitalized. He's holding on to his life. And we have people are very disappointed, but they know that this has happened before. And the difference is that younger people are willing to fight it on.
Absolutely. Well, Rosabelle, we'll have to leave it there, but we will be in touch in the coming days to see how this progresses. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, let's take a look now at some other things that caught our eye on social media. Sco Mo was trending globally earlier. That's the nickname that Aussies have given to Scott Morrison, their new Prime Minister. Politics down there have been a shambles this week. Morrison defeated a guy called Peter Dutton, who had challenged Malcolm Turnbull for the top job. Sco Mo is now Australia's 5th Prime Minister in 6 years. Procter & Gamble is a massive US company that makes cleaning products and stuff, but IDK, FML, they want to trademark some well-known acronyms. WTH? IMO, it's a terrible idea, but they think it'll help them sell soap and stuff. LOL, GTFO. Now, it's been about a year since the Rohingya crisis exploded in Myanmar. More than 1 million people were forced from their homes after a brutal crackdown against the Muslim minority group by the Myanmar military. And despite efforts to get them home, many find themselves stuck in camps because their homes are no longer there.
Almost 1 million Rohingya, mostly Muslims, have been living in Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh, most of them since they fled from Myanmar last year. They've been forced to survive in the most cramped and dangerously exposed conditions on earth, wondering if they will ever be able to return home. But for that to happen, Myanmar needs to quicken the repatriation process of sending people back to where they come from. A repatriation deal was signed between Myanmar and Bangladesh in November last year. The first step was verifying the identities of returnees. In February 2018, Bangladesh submitted a list of 8,000 names, but only 878 of those were verified by Myanmar, raising doubts about the country's willingness to take them back. 4 months later, the UN and Myanmar also signed an agreement to begin repatriation. The deal, which was seen as a breakthrough, was aimed at creating conditions for the voluntary, safe, dignified, and sustainable return of Rohingya. But it was criticized for its lack of transparency and rejected by some Rohingya community leaders.
Also, they are not our identity right, Rohingya.
The Rohingya say they will not return to Myanmar without a guarantee of basic rights and citizenship.
Also, we like to be here, equal right with the other ethnicity.
Meanwhile, the UN continues to pressure Myanmar to work harder on repatriation. It also says Rohingya remaining in Rakhine have their freedom of movement severely restricted. They are prevented from reaching their jobs, schools, and even healthcare institutions.
Right now, the conditions are not conducive for a voluntary, dignified, and sustainable return.
Reports also suggest that former Rohingya villages, some of which have been burnt to the ground, are now seeing construction, including fresh roads and infrastructure for the military, raising further doubts on Myanmar's commitment to let the Rohingya live there. Talks continue, but Myanmar has set no concrete timeline for the return of the Rohingyas. Meanwhile, its leader, Aung San Suu Kyi, continues to defend her country's policies.
It's very difficult for us to put a time frame on it by ourselves unilaterally because we have to work with Bangladesh in order to do that.
Last year, this was the world's fastest growing refugee crisis. This year, the situation is not very optimistic in these overcrowded refugee camps. The Rohingyas are still wondering if they can ever go back to the place they once called home.
Around the world now for some other stories you need to know this Friday. Researchers in the United States say that Russian trolls have spread misinformation about vaccines in recent years. So as well as messing with the election, they also encourage people to believe conspiracy theories about the dangers of immunization. Lots of the posts appeared on Twitter. This is a tunnel dug by drug dealers between Mexico and the United States. It went from a home in the town of San Luis Rio, Colorado, to an abandoned KFC restaurant in San Luis. It's 180 meters long. The guy who owns the disused KFC has been arrested. And this retro creation is Russia's attempt at the electric car. It's made by Kalashnikov, famous for making the rifle. The CV1 doesn't yet have a price tag, but it does apparently go from 0 to 60 in 6 seconds. Now, luxury fashion is more and more sought after by consumers in China. Here's Kim.
Bling bling. Money increasingly ain't no thing, especially if you're Chinese and a millennial, like education consultant Michelle Han.
The older generation might consume luxury goods in order to show off their wealth or how they differ from other people. But to me, purchasing luxury goods is an expression of taste.
Chinese young people are buying luxury brands like never before. Often they're from single-child families, which means they're cashed up with mum and dad's money, making them the perfect consumers. No surprise then, high-end designers are taking advantage, using more Asian models and influencers, like Kiko Mizuhara for Christian Dior or Zhao Dongyu for Burberry.
Every brand is targeting young people with their marketing campaigns, like the Louis Vuitton New Wave series we sold the other day in our shop. Its color scheme and design are a series that young people like.
Chinese shoppers make up a third of overall global luxury purchases. But now Chinese shoppers are increasingly buying their bling-in goods within their own borders.
Domestic spend is increasing, which is one of the reasons also luxury goods yet again are increasing their efforts to build infrastructure in China.
Once the sole domain of metropolises like Beijing and Shanghai, smaller cities like regional capital Hangzhou are seeing luxury brands set up shop. Drawn by millennials who choose to stay in the regions where the cost of living is lower and they have more disposable cash.
I like to look at all kinds of luxury goods and understand some trends, because they were produced rather eloquently, along with the materials used to make them. They are of the highest quality, so we, young people, are really attracted to them.
China will soon have more millionaires than any other country in the world. And brands that prey on our simultaneous desire to fit in and stand out are ready.
Now, department store dressing rooms are going high-tech in an attempt to help brick-and-mortar stores compete with the online ones. Have a look at this.
A mirror with a difference.
You can see that there's a product name, the product image. And
this smart version uses cameras to generate augmented reality. When shoppers try on clothes, they can now see how they'd look in different colors and sizes. And they can virtually change their surroundings, as well as share their pictures on social media.
You want to put on one item, see it in every color, and in our mirror they can select colors, see how it looks, and then decide on the purchase.
Memo Me mirrors are used in Neiman Marcus stores across the United States.
They're trying to jump ahead of the online experience. They're personal elements that computers can't do virtually.
Online US retail sales grew more than 16% year-on-year in the first quarter of 2018, far more than the industry as a whole. But e-commerce still accounts for less than 10% of all retail sales. Some industry watchers think brick-and-mortar outlets, which still dominate retail, can claw back some of that ground by introducing elements of online buying into physical stores.
These are the opportunities they're looking at, how to revolutionize the experience. So at some point it seems that the decline is going to flatten out and perhaps even reverse if they can get their act together.
A 2017 study predicts the global smart mirror market will grow more than 12% by 2021.
The sensors give you positional tracking.
Dan O'Mara runs a co-working space for tech companies. One of the projects underway here is integrating virtual reality into smart retail. He says companies should ensure the technology isn't used to gather customers' images and data without their knowledge.
We're introducing cameras and microphones that are on all the time, and so we should understand the ethical considerations of what we're doing and balance that with full consent.
Medina Beit-Marova concedes smart mirrors have a long way to go before they become mainstream, but she predicts within a few years the technology will be a key part of the long-term success of traditional retailers.
And in today's Animals Doing Stuff, they really stick their nose in. It's called the Snoot Challenge, and my producers love it, so enjoy. And that is your lot from the NewsFeed team. Reach out to us with your questions, comments, complaints and suggestions. I'm at Kamali Melbourne. You'll find us 24/7 on Twitter, YouTube and Facebook. Follow, subscribe and add. See you again tomorrow.